Shalom Alochon Chonawati Chetwati. Today we have an incredible show. We have a wonderful guest by the name of Sarah. She is of Kurdish descent and she has came forward to express her incredible story and testimony to what has happened in the Assyrian genocide. Sarah is the great-granddaughter of a Kurdish leader who was a perpetrator in the Assyrian genocide, in the 1915 Assyrian genocide, and she contacted me with incredible bravery and has expressed how she wants to share her personal family story and what she knows that happened in the Assyrian genocide. Thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on with us on the Assyrian National Broadcasting Channel to express your personal story and how you repented and everything that you can share to not only the Assyrian people and the Kurdish people, but truly anyone who is watching that truly wants to know what happened on, first account of what happened in the genocide. Thank you so much, Sarah, for building the bravery to come on.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nahran. I'm happy to be here. I'm very happy for this opportunity. I'm very blessed for this opportunity, honestly. So.
Absolutely, and we're very blessed and thankful. And as I mentioned earlier, you're truly a beacon of light in this darkness that came forward. And I'm sure many people that are going to be watching this show will truly be in tears, and it will be almost a mourning time for many of us to remember, and especially almost also like tears of joy to also have someone as beautiful as yourself to share what truly happened, and how you're even sorry for something that you didn't do directly, but that family members did. We're very thankful for you, Sarah.
Thank you. So let's start.
Absolutely. So Sarah, what made you reach out to me in the beginning, and your kind words that you shared about what your great grandfather did? What truly made you step out of the box and say, you know what, I'm going to reach out to her and tell her that my family was involved in the Assyrian genocide?
Thank you for the question, Nahran. Well, the first thing is that I have been trying to reach out for a lot of Assyrians about talking about this genocide. I have been contacting mostly Assyrians that been living in Erbil. Basically, it's because it's the place where my grandfather took the share of this genocide. So I contacted writers, I contacted journalists, I contacted Assyrian. They were all Assyrian, those who I have been contacting. Also contacted lawyers, but unfortunately none of them really been answering me. Sometimes my messages were ignored, mostly because these Assyrian are very much afraid of their lives, of their family lives as well. They live in a society where anything could happen to them, from murder, from rape. They live in one of the most horrible dictatorship societies. So they didn't really dare to answer me and answer my messages to talk openly about this genocide. But I was blessed enough. I believe one of them made a fake profile and contacted me, and the person gave me the link to your profile, and he told me that this lady is an activist living in the US. She is very brave. And then I checked your profile, I saw your post, and I thought hopefully she can reply to me, and I sent the message to you, and here we are right now. So I was happy I got to know you through that person.
Yes, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Sarah. And when a friend of mine who also advocates for the Assyrian plight, she asked me, she said, did you know, Nahran, that there is a spam box in the junk box? And I said, no, I didn't know that. So I went on my page, and that's why I'm so sorry for my late reply, but I went on it, and in this, as I said, in this whole compile of horrible messages that I was receiving just from people that are against the Assyrian genocide, against the Assyrian plight, and they don't like people to speak out. And, amongst all those ugly messages, I saw the most beautiful message I have ever seen, and that was from you. And I read it, and I got so emotional. And I remember I was on the phone with a good friend of mine, and she's like, Naharen, what's wrong? And I said, oh my God, you can't believe what I'm reading right now. She's like an angel that's coming to shed, light on this story. But absolutely, Sarah. And, I wanted to ask you, do you still have a relationship with your grandfathers?
They passed away, but when I was little, my grandfather, he never really had an intimate relation with us, especially the girls who are in the family. He used to keep us away from him. He was very conservative, very tribal, so he only liked basically the grandsons, not really us girls. But I don't really have, since he passed away, I don't really have a relation with him. But most of the information that I'm gonna share is from the mouth of my uncle, of my father, of our elderly relatives, and also near relatives that know about this story, and as well friends of my grandfather as well, and their grandchildren who still lives today, and who also took part, but in different places in northern Iraq, basically, in when they were contributed together in the genocide. So I have a lot of sources, but my grandfather, since he didn't really were much near us granddaughters, I can't really tell of his personality, but from his behavior, I can say it's very conservative, very Kurdish, tribal, and as well, it's very hard for me to say it, but also a murderer and a genocide leader. So um, I can't say any more than that, basically.
Absolutely. And Sarah, I think it's quite ironic this interview. This interview may be the only interview that we have where a Kurdish individual has came forward with your type of bravery and actually spoke about it and admitted to it in full on media. So that alone, this interview will be legendary and something that I'm sure people will watch for many years to come. And quite ironic to it is I'm a great granddaughter of genocide victims. Both of my great grandfathers were murdered in northern Iran. And who knows, maybe God has brought others somehow, because your great grandfather was murdered and my great grandfathers who were murdered, who knows, maybe they were in similar areas. But did you know, Sarah, growing up, that those lands that all the Kurdish people are inhabiting today were the homelands of the ancient Assyrian people for almost 7,000 years?
Of course. Anyone who have read history with relatable sources know this land today is all Assyrian. Syria, Iraq, South Turkey, even in the northern parts of Iran as well. So anyone who have read history knows that the first people who ever were there were the Assyrians, who built this civilization, and who still are the only ones who built a decent civilization in Middle East. And myself, I've always been very interested about Assyrian history, so I've been reading a lot of books, and I have to say, most because of my fascination as well to the Assyrian history, maybe the universe somehow connected me to be the grandchild of a genocide leader, and to know about that my own grandfather have killed a lot of Assyrians, and me being fascinated about the Assyrian history. Maybe the universe really wanted to me put this out. So I'm of course today, even cities like Erbil, cities like Duhok, cities like Zaho, the Erbil Citadel, which is one of the most beautiful buildings in this area, was made by the Assyrians. There are a lot of misinformation going out there that the Kurds built it, but Kurdish people didn't even exist there when the Assyrians honestly built these amazing cities, amazing architecture. If you ever have been in today's southeast Turkey, you would go to Mardin, which is an amazing city where the Assyrians been building it amazing houses that today is one of the most visited touristic places, honestly. So um, anyone who have read history knows that the Assyrian people have contributed a lot, and this land today that we are in are Assyrian land, and the Assyrian people still living in it, even if there are so many censorship that goes on in the KRG right now, where even I'm not gonna blame to this young generation, but I'm gonna blame the old generation, of course, who and the KRG government for censoring so many architectural Assyrian places and basically giving out misinformation about who was about the cities, about the buildings that the Assyrians have made, about the jewelries, properties, all these misinformation that are not just historically wrong, but that has absolutely no truth in them. This makes me very sad because the new generation, they don't know anything about Assyrian history. They don't get to learn Assyrian history in schools. They don't know that there are even Assyrians living among them that are still living. The word Assyrian is very censored, believe me. You can't call yourself Christian, but you can't call yourself Assyrian. That's like a word that is very it's basically a word that's there's no law. It's how to say, it's there is a hidden law that's saying if you say you're Assyrian, you will get in trouble. So this is why a lot of Assyrians that I have met in Erbil, for instance, they don't dare call themselves Assyrian. They call themselves Christians. And there, there they have built this society where nobody knows who the Assyrians are. Nobody know the history of this land. Nobody know who it really belongs to. And one thing that has made me very angry, even those paid Kurdish historians coming on Kurdish TV, talking about cities like Zaho, like Duhok, like Erbil, and saying this all who built these places were Kurds, and I don't know who they think that they are to even say that, because there absolutely no historical proof of their extent of that Kurds have been building cities. They go out giving misinformation to Kurdish schools, Kurdish universities. They go out everywhere and giving out this misinformation that Assyrian has always been a minority, that there always have been a Kurdish rule, and like a lot of lies that just going on and on and on and on, and it's very much sickening because their propaganda is about to Kurdify every place, every historical place, where it's very hard to do that because there is nowhere, it says nowhere in any relatable history books in the world that there are Kurds who be building this thing basically. And when there are a lot of Assyrian activists, very brave Assyrian people who I have seen in many university presentation attacking those historians, calling those places Kurdish, and they came out with the real information. These people get shut down in a very ugly way, or you basically don't see them ever again. This has been done many times. I have a lot of Assyrian friends in Erbil who I have had contact with them about when there were one girl in many years ago who said that in the Kurdish identity cards that the KRG have been doing now, that it says you can either be a Kurd or an Arab living in KRG. And what she just basically did was she's saying that she's an Assyrian and that she's ancient to this land, and there should be counted that there are Assyrian people living there, not just Christian, because Christianity is religion, Assyrian is the identity. She
Exactly.
got by a lot of students that was in that presentation. She got called out ugly words. This girl, even in the YouTube comments, they were, saying really ugly stuff to her, but she was brave enough to stand in that position and say the truth. And I believe this has a lot to do that Kurdish government in KRG, they don't want any Assyrian identity to exist, basically, and this is where they go very, very wrong. You cannot clear out an identity. You cannot deny the Assyrian existence because it exists more than the Kurdish identity. We have to be, we Kurds have to just face the reality. There's no history about us, how we have became these people. But Assyrian people, they have the most relatable and most decent history that you can find in the most decent historic books, in documentaries. They have every proof for that they exist. But we Kurds, we don't have that proof. It's okay, we don't have the proof that we have existed, but don't deny or remove other people's history, or just put out lies out there. That's where it really becomes ugly. So
Mhm.
of course I have been telling
That's a
the
very good
Assyrian land,
point.
yeah, it's okay, like it's okay, like we don't know exactly, there's no history behind how we came into today's Iraq, today's Syria, but we really had to thank the Assyrians who back then welcomed us to the civilization society, that we could take part in it. But then uh, what we started to do, basically, we started to remove their history. We started to destroy their civilization step by step, and that's muchly recorded. So it's um, the Assyrian genocide and the ethnic cleanse haven't just happened in 1915 or 1933. It has been an ongoing systematically thing in years. So I think this is one thing that Kurds should know. And when they coming out and say, "Oh, you only talk about 1915, but Kurds have been there for it." True, Kurds have been there for years, but we were not the one that were building this civilization. We were not the owner of this land, but we destroyed it and we fight it against the people who welcomed us to the society. This is how we got into the society. So it is nothing to be, ashamed
Absolutely.
about it. Okay to talk the truth. For me, like, it's very okay to talk the truth, that this is how we have done, this how we have became. But again, what we are have been done was not acceptable. What we do today, it's also not acceptable. It's even a crime. So
Absolutely. And
I think
Sarah,
it's very
do you believe that the Kurdish regional government is heavily involved with the systematic annihilation of the Assyrians?
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, because there's no question about it, honesty. There's because anyone who raises against them a voice or anything will be systematically removed. And the Assyrians, because they are the I'm sorry, ancient people of
Sure.
this land, and they want to get an independence, which they have been promised in years and they haven't got it. So they are desperate to do exactly anything to get that goal, which is an impossible one, if you ask me, since you are removing the most precious history and most ancient people. You are basically removing the history, and a country without history is nothing. So
Thank
um,
you for acknowledging that, Sarah. It's kind of the same idea of building a home. Like, if they want to build a home or a new home for the Kurdish people, the Kurdish regional government needs to think of other lands that is more tied to the Kurdish people, instead of
absolutely,
annihilating an entire group of indigenous people that have been
absolutely,
around from the beginning of civilization. Because the truth is, that means they would have to go to every university in the world and burn all their books, and they would need to go to every museum in the world and destroy all their tablets and their artifacts. And this the Kurdish government cannot do. And, anyone that supports the annihilation of Assyrians and, take it from a civilization that's been around for almost 7,000 years. And I'm sure you know,
Yeah.
since you're so educated, Sarah, but the Assyrian Empire was one of the strongest and most technical and most advanced, intelligent empires to ever exist. And for us to not have a nation anymore, the tables can turn very easily. And this is something the Kurdish regional government and the accomplices must understand, that the systematic annihilation of the Assyrian people truly needs to come to an end, because one day the tables may turn, and one day the Assyrian state may be larger than the Kurdish state, and they will be at the mercy of the Assyrian people. But of course, because of our faith in God, we would never commit those types of crimes. But truly
This
something that as a nation they must repent.
I want to put out one thing. The Assyrian people has never in their entire life hurted anyone or have done anything bad, because I've seen a lot of Kurdish pages going out and putting lies about how the Assyrian Empire was bad, how the Assyrian people was bad, and how the Assyrian hates Kurds. I want to tell you in this interview that Assyrians do not hate anyone to start with. They have gone just through
Thank you for
the
acknowledging that, because I do hear
the
that too sometimes. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Yeah, like I the Assyrians, they have gone through the worst genocides and the worst backstabbing times, where the Kurds have honestly been backstabbing them when they welcomed the Kurds in their civilization and society. We Kurds, we have always been mountain people, like history, we have always been. And the Assyrians, when who had the civilization, they thought maybe they can welcome more people to be part of this civilization they were, having. So they basically welcomed Kurds, welcomed a lot of other groups. And what we literally did, we destroyed it. And this is where when we say when we say that that Kurdish people have been backstabbing Assyrians in history, that's true, because we have done it multiplied times, where we have where history has been like repeated and repeated. And this is why the Assyrian people do not they should have all the right to tell their history, to tell this part of the history, without being telling that they are hateful or racist. Assyrians are not racist, but the Kurdish people, those who are not educated enough, they should have the thick skin to accept the truth and history, what we have done. It's nothing shameful. It's shameful if you still deny it and you still continue to deny it. But once you accept it, I don't think the Assyrians will have any kind of hatred towards anyone. They're not hateful people. And I have seen like a lot of Kurds writing also to me and saying, oh, because I have been in some Kurdish group where I've had a fake profile, and I told them that when every time this topic about Aghed, the Armenian genocide, comes up, and they would say a lot of Kurds helped Armenians to survive, but also there were a lot of decent Turks that did the same exactly. So that doesn't mean anything. So I wrote as a comment that my grandfather, he was a genocide leader in the Seifo, in the Assyrian genocide back in 1915. And they will be attacking me and saying, oh, only your grandfather was killing Assyrians. My grandfather was not the only one who killed Assyrians. My grandfather got help with hundreds of Kurdish men. There were people who would help him directly. There were people who would be helping him indirectly. And my father also helped the other men who contributed by helping my grandfather to take over these 3 villages. So as a thank you, my grandfather would go in other places and help these men to do the same, but in different villages and different cities, and sometimes attack Assyrian properties and stuff like that. And it's impossible that my grandfather would be the only one who would be doing this, because one lonely person can't do all these things.
Exactly. It's
So I
physically
want to
impossible
tell
for
them,
one man to take over hundreds and hundreds of Assyrian villages. It's not humanly possible, and it's
yeah, and
documented that there were thousands of Kurdish terrorists initially invaded, and the ones who were living, because the truth is, like you said, Sarah, we don't hate the Kurds. We never have hated the Kurds. The
I
people
never
who
hated
had
anyone,
initially came
honestly.
into the people who had initially came into northern Iraq, we accepted them. We wanted them, like you said, to live amongst us, because evidently Iran and Turkey were not being also friendly with them. So they came into Shimal, and we took them in, even from when I was living in northern Iraq. My family, they did everything they possibly can to their Kurdish neighbors. Anything they ever asked, we always did. My parents never said no, never. Any of my aunts, giving furniture or anything that she, wanted to give away, she would give it to her Kurdish neighbors and friends, and give. That's what we always, wanted to give, and this is what we've been raised and built into us. But we never to give our homelands, by force. We wanted to live in peace and continue to inhabit our homelands as the indigenous
Exactly.
people. And Sarah, this goes to my next question I wanted to ask you. Growing up, did you ever think your family members would be capable of committing suicide?
Um, Honestly, this is a very nice question, and it gets me very emotional. Of course, nobody can think that somebody's grandfather or any family member, near family member, can be a murderer or a genocide leader or a rapist or a criminal by any kind. But when I got to know it, I have to say, when my uncle and father and his friends were talking about it, it took me mentally, and I didn't feel good at all, and it was one of the most horrible thing that I had to deal with. A truth, a very ugly truth. For me, being a person that would see the truth that it was a genocide and it was ugly, it takes very hard, and it was very harsh. Like I could not, I had no appetite to eating for days when after knowing this. And just looking at my father and my uncle, I felt so disgusted, and I felt so guilt, and I wondered, like, do you guys feel the same as I feel right now? Do you ever realize what you guys have done? And I told my father. So my grandfather was a genocide leader who basically helped steal people's land, kidnapped women and took people's property, and basically did one of the first ugliest genocide in the history. And what do you think? And my father, like, he didn't reply to me, but I didn't feel mentally stable at all. It was one of the ugliest things I had to deal with my entire life. And believe me, it's not easy. It's never easy, because my grandfather, he committed in this genocide, and it's our genocide. Your people were the victims. My grandfathers were the one that did it. So you don't need to feel any guilt or shame or any kind of disgustingness. But I had to deal with this thing, and reason why I wanted to put this out, because I don't want to deal with I don't want my children to deal with it when I get children, so I don't pass it to my children. So this is why I hope, and I hope to see this day where I can find any of the grandchild of any of these people who were owner of these three villagers. So when I get my share to these villagers, I can pass to them and say, this is where your grandfathers. It's not mine. My grandfather did this, and I am totally sorry for this. But the justice is that you have to get back your things, and I don't want to have it. I'm not interested. I don't want my children to deal with it, nor grandchildren in the future. So it's for me, I have talked to a lot of Kurds who has had the same background like I am. I've been talking to a guy from Zaho. He converted to Christianity, but he said that his grandparents did exactly the same, and that his grandfathers, he was knowing for kidnapping a Syrian woman raping them, taking them. And when he knew about it, he didn't feel mentally stable anymore. He felt very disgusted. He couldn't ever deal with it. So he had to go to a doctor to basically just to feel normal again. And
Wow.
he said that he started to feel such a hatred towards him that there were no end. And then he started to fight with his uh, family member about, so that they realize what they have done and stuff like that. But nobody took him serious. And the thing is, he, just like me, tried to talk with a lot of Assyrians, to reach out to anyone that could help, that could put his voice out. But he tried, just like me, he did this mistake to only contact Assyrians in Duhok and Zaho, which is impossible for them to reply, because it's a very, as I told you, they live in a very dictatorship society. If they put something out, their family members, people are not afraid of themselves, but they're afraid of their family members the most if they have families. So
Right. Especially
he
when they
said,
have an
like,
occupation like the Kurdish regional government controlling
yeah.
everything,
So
monitoring
he told
their
me,
social media activity.
he felt so bad. He literally, he couldn't even, just like I was in that period, like I felt very, you could see that I was not mentally good, because it's really hard, Nahren, to know that some of your family members or your as can do such an ugly, inhumane thing. It's not easy to deal with. And it's like a shame you have to bear. It's like a guilt I have to bear right now. And it's not, it's like, it's really disgusting if you only think, if you, like, in my, like, right in my clothes right now, I can't even explain the horrible feeling, because I mean, it's nothing pleasant. And your parents, your grandparents, they were the victims. They have survived the worst of the worst. You don't have anything to be ashamed. You just need to be proud that you have survived it, and you have seen all the bad things that was unfairly done to you. But me, who is the grandchild of a genocide leader, it's very hard, and it takes you mentally, I have to say. It still is, even today. Like, when I think about, when I read a lot of documents about the Syrian genocide, also about the Armenian genocide. I read a lot about the Assyrian people who have to go through. I also read about what they do to the Assyrians today. So I'm always up to the Assyrian news. And unfortunately, the Assyria TV, everything is Syriac, which is understandable. But if they could put out something in English, then I know it will be good as well. So I hope they do that in the future. So, because
Absolutely.
it,
And we plan on,
uh,
God willing, to have more English programs so that your generation, especially, as you said, the Kurdish people shouldn't let the Kurdish government, the Kurdish regional government, KRG, influence them and their moral, ethical rights. This is something that's distilled in you by your family, by God, but aside, from God, but this is something of who you are, your soul. So unless you repent and understand what has happened, that you are being lied to, that those lands that you're inhabiting were taken in such an disgusting force of murder, rape, burning, destruction. And so for acknowledging my great grandparents, like my great grandmother was the only one out of my family to survive. 75% of my family was killed, and they were friends with the Kurdish people. They gave them anything they would ask of them. They never ever denied them of anything, their needs. And to turn around and kill my same great grandfather, who had actually even employed a lot of them, and he proudly would wear his cross, and they literally crucified him and burned down his farming crops, and killed 75% of my family. So this is something that we can't ignore and just pretend that it didn't happen, and then create this country that's based on murder is just not the right thing to do.
no,
So people
no,
like you coming forward, and we're not saying for the Kurdish people to convert to Christianity, even though that's
no,
our
no.
primary religion, but to just as Kurdish people, as people, humans in general,
Yeah,
to have respect for history, because we're truly living historical people that are still alive until today. You know,
Yeah.
most ancient people are not living anymore, and they've diluted so much that there is
No.
not even a relevance. But to have native people live among, as you know, I mentioned, Sarah, to you, like respecting the native people in America, we give rights, extra rights to the Native Americans. We protect them. We have laws to protect them. We give them extra perks in schoolings, in medicine, in anything they need, because they have been affected by the people who had originally taken their lands. But you know, not to excuse that, but the Aryan genocide, and that is still happening. It's the only genocide that is still happening today. You know, decreasing anyone that says in Iraq, whether it's the Iraqi central government or the Kurdish regional government, lying to the international governments and saying they are protecting our language, our ethnicity, our culture, our archaeological sites, is a lie. Because if they are, they answer one question: why are there only less than 200,000 Assyrians in those lands, and you are labeling them only as Christians when they have history that predates Christianity? We have history that predates most religions. And so, you know, for them just to annihilate us, and then what they say is, oh, we have divisions. Our divisions are no concern to the actual authentic history. You know, we are known historically as Assyrians, and the Assyrian genocide is something that has ethnically, not just religious, but ethnically, they are cleansing us. They are doing demographic changes, as you know, Sarah, and you know, watching it firsthand from your family. But I was going to ask you, Sarah, did you ever hear your uncles speak about the Assyrian genocide and any explicit details? I know it will be hard for many people to hear, but anything that you can share that you can remember about what happened when they invaded?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If you let me tell everything from A to B about how my grandfather got into it, and then what they did, and how they collaborated and stuff like that, because I have some information which is a little bit disturbing, and I hope the viewers and you can handle it as well. So my grandfather, as I told you,
Absolutely.
he was a Kurdish guy, shepherd basically. He didn't
Before
own
you
any
start,
land.
Before you start, Sarah, can you say something? Because I know what may happen. People are going to say, "Oh, you know what? She's probably not Kurdish, or she's something, you know, that is just propaganda." Can you say something in Kurdish that's not going to give away your identity for your own protection, but just say something in Kurdish, like, you know, say an entire paragraph, if you may, just to prove to the people that, you know, we're just
Okay.
protecting your identity for your own safety of yourself and your family abroad.
Okay, I'm gonna say that I'm giving my evidence about the Assyrian genocide, say for that happened in 1915, that my great grandfather was with it. Okay, so I'm gonna start. Birana Barez بەڵێ بیرەنانی بەڕێز من کچی پیاوێکم کە لە قەتلی جەماعی سەیفۆ بەشدار بووە لە هەولێر، لە دەڤەرەکانی هەولێر. ئەمڕۆ من لەگە نەهرێن ئاینێوە قسانەکەم لەسەر ئەو قەتڵ عامە کە کرایە. هیوادارم هەمووتان جێمان لێ بگرن و جێ بگرن کە ئەو قەتڵ عامە کرایە ساڵی 1915 لەگە قەتلی عامی ئەرمەنەکانیش. فهیوادارم هەمووتان جێمان لێ بگرن و لەگەریشمان بن. So I just said, like now in Kurdish, that me and Nahrin Arnewa are talking about the genocide that happened in 1915, the Syrian genocide, and my grandfather, who basically was a genocide leader, participated in it. So yeah.
Okay.
So, and now,
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Yes.
Okay. Can I start now? Yes. So my great grandfather, he was a shepherd. He didn't own any land. He owned a tent with his family. They would go to place to place. They will be nomads basically. So they will go to place to place. It depends where the season is. My grandfather was very tired of his life. So when in 1915, basically, when the genocide of the Armenian were active, my grandfather and other Kurdish men got the idea of exactly to joining this force. The Ottoman Empire were recruiting men, and my grandfather took part with it with a lot of other Kurdish men, basically, who had the same um, bad economy like him, and some people who just want to contribute to take part of this genocide. So my grandfather, he got horse, he got weapon, and of course there were a lot of men that would systematically go to some places where they know they were Assyrians or Armenians or basically Christians that lived in those areas. My grandfather would help. My grandfather would be part of different groups because there will be thousands of Kurdish men in different places would attack different towns, different villages, basically wherever there are a lot of Assyrians. So my grandfather helped a lot of. He was very active in those groups, and because he was he was a nomad in the Erbil area. He wanted to have his eyes went on three villages that are very known to be very rich. They would have like a lot of water. It will be a rich village basically with a lot of gods. He wanted to attack these three villages, and these villages will be Assyrian owned villages basically. And he and his men they would plan systematically what they would do, and then he will of course give shares to them in different things. He might would give some property to some, and the property could be everything from jewelry, from whatever people could sell and buy. Also property could unfortunately be women as well. So my grandfather, they attacked the first large village in a bright daylight. With his men, they will first, of course, attack the men, because when a genocide happens, you first divide the women and the men. So they're first attacking the men, and the men would be divided in three groups. So imagine if 400 men attacks a village, what can happen? The villagers will have zero chance of doing anything. So the Assyrian men, they will be divided in three groups, as my uncle would say. One group will be the boys, babies, basically, and the other ones will be teenagers, and then this third group will be adults, men who are older than 18. And of course, those who were older than 18, they will be killed right away because they were the biggest threat for them. I'm sorry for saying this, but like this is, I need to put this information.
I'm getting emotional because I'm
Okay.
just thinking of my family, and
Yes. So the
who
first
knows?
thing
They could have been right there.
Yes. So the first thing that is that they would put these elderly men in different positions. Some would be burned alive. Some will be buried alive, and they, of course, in every Assyrian village there will be a church, and they will put these. They will put some men in the church, and they will burn the church while these people are inside them. I'm sorry, Nahem, but I have to put this out. So I'm
No, it's
really,
okay.
I
Please
will get
say
as emotional.
everything.
Okay, so, and of course, while these people were burned alive, they will then take the teenager boys, and this is how they will systematically kill the teenager boys. Some they would keep some as slaves, but then they would kill some like tools. They would play, and they will have like one Assyrian teenager as their victim. There is a game they play when they ride horses. Usually they will like catch rabbits with those kind of games. Like they will be riding a horse, and then they will you know with stones tried to catch the rabbit and kill them. So instead of rabbits or any other animals, they had these teenager boys. Well, they will be get stoned till death, basically. So this is what they would do with the teenage boys, because they wanted to have them as toys for entertainment, basically. And here will come the saddest part from my to talk about is the woman, of course, since we are both women and we know how hard it is to be women, especially in that position. The women had to watch while the men were basically get killed. Some they will keep the little girls so that when they grow up they will either be slaves or they will get forcibly married to any of these men, and then they will share the most beautiful ones. To my grandfather used it to he shared two of these most beautiful women he found to his friends, and then my uncle would say there was one he wanted to marry or take by force, and this woman would have one child, and my uncle even said the name of her, but what she literally did was the saddest thing you can ever imagine. There will be a river in that village, so what she literally would go to is that she took suicide. She first drowned her kid, her baby she had, and then herself afterwards. And then there will be some girls who will they will try to escape away. Some could, some not. And the elderly women who are grandmas, they will be killed right away. There were no question about it, because they thought that they are useless, or they can't do anything to them. So this is how they would share the women, and they will also forcibly convert them to Islam. So they didn't have the right to be Christians anymore. These women, most of them, my uncle said majority of the women honestly attempted suicide before they would marry anyone, or before they would get raped or anything, so that they could survive that way. And this is just a harsh side of the history that when I knew about, especially that part, I was so heartbroken. But this is a history and people should know about it, and it should be out there. This is the truth of the genocide, the real face. So as well, I remember when they will be sharing the women, afterwards they will of course share the property, they will take over the land. These villages all had Assyrian names, but my grandfather burned down every evidence of their Assyrian existence, basically. So he bought new names to them, and then he put it under his name. And after that, when he got all this land and all this property, he would contribute to help his other friends doing the same. You asked me if my grandfather took part in 1933. According to my uncle, he wasn't with more. He didn't took physically, but he did help a lot of other Kurdish groups indirectly. It could be with weapon, it could be economically or something like that. So I'm not sure about 1933, but I know that he have been with other Kurdish groups, basically helping them to do the same in different parts in northern Iraq. And this is like how they will tell me that my great grandparents would do. Yes, and I would like to also say that the most of Assyrians, there are a lot of, let's say, Kurdish tribes that are not Kurdish. They are Assyrian, but they have been Kurdified. They could have been they could have been becoming slaves back in the genocide time, because they also had to change their religion and the name to Kurdish ones. So I believe basically a lot of Kurdish tribes that aren't Kurdish. If you look at them historically, they are Assyrian, but they have been by force being Muslim and by force being Kurdified. So I believe these people are the ones that survived the genocide by becoming slaves, unfortunately, or wives to these horrible men. And I believe like most of them, because ethnically you can see difference between Assyrian and Kurds, and I've seen a lot of Kurds that look very Assyrian to me, and even their name sounds very, I would say, not very Kurdish. So I have not dared to talk with these people about their ancestry, but I can feel that. I mean, I do see the difference between an Arab and a Kurd ethnically, but I also can see the difference between Assyrian and Kurds. So I believe a lot of people today have, I could say, maybe 50%, not 50%, but a lot of people, a big percentage of Kurdish people today living in northern Iraq have Assyrian in them or are ethnically Assyrians but being Kurdified.
Wow, what a compelling story, Sarah. Do you believe that Assyrians in northern Iraq, in the KRG area, do you believe they're still in danger?
Of course, they are still in danger. There's no question about it. I mean, the government would track them easily, and the reason why it's very hard for Assyrians to buy. I'll just give you an example now. To buy houses outside Ankawa, even today, it's very hard for them to do so because. If the seller is Kurdish, if he knows they are Assyrian, he will make them. It's harder for them to even get the house, and the reason is the government wants them to be in one quarter, one place, so that is easier for tracking. And it has been like that for years. I mean, before look, I'm Kurdish, okay? So before, in Saddam's time, it was easy for Assyrians to buy properties in Erbil. It was way easier, but right now it's very, very hard for them to buy property in Erbil. Very hard. Like it's if the seller knows that they are Assyrians or Christians, he will make the price way expensive, and will find like other ways to make it hard for them to buy the property, and that has a lot to do. They want the Christians and Assyrian Christian be in one place, so it's very easier for tracking, basically.
Hmm. Right, and it's the reason why we also say it's the untold Holocaust or the silent genocide, because it's a new
Yes.
modern way of committing genocide, because in
Yeah.
1915, in 1890, in the 1700s, in 1933, and so forth. Even in quite recent, in 2014, the invasion and abandonment of the Assyrians and the Yazidis, they have to do it in a more strategic way and a silent way to not alarm the international communities that they are truly, uh, annihilating an entire ethnic group because they want to make this country out of bloodshed, which is not the ethical, not the proper way to do
No,
things, especially in
no,
today's time. I
no.
was going to ask you, Sarah, do you believe, when you said Assyrians are still in danger in northern Iraq in the KRG area, do you believe
Yeah.
that Assyrians and Kurds can coexist together?
Look, they can only coexist together if Kurds know their history well, and that they admit the genocide, admit the past, and as well give back the Assyrian land, because I know a lot of Assyrians who have been losing their land even recently. So as you told, it's an ongoing genocide. Only that, and I believe that it's very impossible. And I believe you asked me if Assyria, if they have the right to have self-governance state. I believe absolutely, and it's not even late to do so. It's the rightest thing to do, to protect your own people. It's because Kurds, they I'm sorry to say this, but majority of Kurds are very the illiterate, like they don't read. They go after propaganda. They go after the conspiracy that KRG putting out. So it's very hard for them to change that. It's like it. I mean, I would suggest the best for your people to have your own state, basically. I mean, Kurds can only coexist if they really admit everything that have been done. They read history. They know truly who they are,
So,
and
Sarah, you suggest for the Kurdish people to self-educate and travel and educate on international
absolutely,
sources instead of be fed the
absolutely,
propaganda that the KRG continues to give them.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the best thing to do. Look, Kurdish people, I'm sorry to say that, but they don't read a lot. Like Assyrians, because they also have been into civilization. There are no illiterate Assyrian. Assyrians are very successful people when it comes to success in their career and stuff like that. But Kurdish people, even today, you can find people who can't read and who can't write. So they must educate themselves about their past and the future and where they are standing right now, basically. And the fake government of KRG, I mean, I'm Kurdish. I'm 100% Kurdish. This government hasn't done anything good, nor for the Assyrians, nor for their own people. They have just been making everyone as a robot, going after their lies, going after their propaganda, doing a lot of harm even to each others. That's what I mean. That was they also have to see, because me as a Kurdish person, I see that Kurds do a lot of harms even to each other. So I don't want to, like, I can't even imagine what they can do to foreigner like an Assyrian or anyone else. So I believe Kurdish people, they only can coexist with Assyrian in one soil, and that's when they educate themselves enough to where they are, whose
Mhm.
land is this, who they truly are, and when they know that, then they can, live together. And I've converted to Christianity, and as you said, they Assyrians are not asking anyone to convert to Christianity, but respecting their beliefs is one of the thing. It's really important, and a lot of Kurds have this ISIS mentality, unfortunately, even that um, they say they attack churches. They think, I've seen how Yazidis been violated. I mean, Yazidi people, I have seen the discrimination that they have been going through all the time before the genocide that happened in 2014. So the Kurdish people, they should start to realize one thing, that just because they are the majority right now, when they have the power, one day they won't have it. And being ugly to everyone in the society can lead you to really, really bad things. And I hope and I strongly suggest that there should be any kind of education. And if not, if they still refuse to, I do believe the only thing would be good for Assyrians and Yazidis to have their own state, own governor, because that's the only thing that can save them from what's going on, basically.
Absolutely. So I see that you're an advocate or believe in the Assyrian people having their own state of Assyria and a self-government or parliament. We're currently working on forming our own government in exile or parliament, as you say. And, these prophecies are really, truly becoming unfolded, as they say. So, do you believe that the state of Assyria, since that is our homeland, should be that exact region? And we're not saying for the Kurds to completely leave or we would commit the same genocide against them that they did to us, but as far as an actual state of Assyria, the truly rightful region would be that exact area, all the way to Mosul. Mosul is part of Nineveh. It's Nineveh, but it's changed. The name had been changed,
Absolutely,
but so
absolutely,
you
yeah.
definitely that region should be the state of Assyria.
Absolutely. I'm telling you one thing that I myself I have been a big fan of Assyrian history, and I've seen the civilization and the society and the empire that I have been building in years. And I'm gonna let you know something, that the most educated people that exist even today's Iraq and even in Kerj, they're all Assyrians, best doctors, best professors, best. They truly can lead a governor. They can lead a state. They won't have a failed state. Look at Israel, for instance. Israel has been existing for thousands of years, but the state of Israel today is very young. But look how many good things Assyrians has been accomplished. I mean, if you look how what they have done to this world with science, with good things, I believe. Let me tell you something. There was one thing I read in there was one Arab guy writing in a pro-Palestinian group, and he was an Israeli Arab. Okay, he was pro-Israel. Let me tell you what he wrote. He wrote that if a deaf person owns a microphone, he can't use it, right? Because he's deaf. But if he drops it and then there's somebody else who find this who find it and use it, and they can use it properly better, he has all the right to have it. And same thing is with the Israel and Palestinian thing, for instance, Palestinian thing. So it's that Israel today, who has built the state, which is Israel itself, it's a very ancient empire, like it has been existing in years. So if somebody else can use this piece of love into better thing, I think he has all the right to use it, because they know how to sell. You hear me right now?
Yes.
Yeah. And the same thing with Assyria. If Assyrian people, which it's their ancient land basically, if they get it back and they can have a state, and the state will be a great one, and they can lead it to better, which I believe they can do, because all of them are educated enough to do so, and they don't have the same mentality that we Kurds have. I think it's gonna be a great one, and I think they can have all the right to do, even if the same geography, you know what I mean? Because I would be sure that me as a Kurd, living under Assyrian law, at least I have the right as a woman, as a human being. You understand what I mean? So of course
Absolutely.
I believe that
The state of Assyria would definitely be a true democracy with a self-government of representation of true democracy for the people. And, you know, as we've been studying, Sarah, you and I, and thousands of other people, millions of other people globally, you know, since the people in northern Iraq, and truly the entire country of Iraq was invaded so many times, and you know, the small groups of radical people that uh, Arabized, Kurdified, and Islamicized the entire country. But truly, the only pure, authentic bloodline in those regions, the majority of them would most likely be Assyrians. So, wouldn't someone want to go back to their ethnic roots and cultural roots and live in a lie? You know, we're not trying to make the whole world Assyrian, as some people, you know, say or joke about, but it's true. You know, people that are doing DNA tests. I mean, Germans, for God's sakes, are finding Assyrian bloodline in them, let alone the people living in Iraq. Like, that is your roots. Like, being Assyrian, you know, anywhere you dig in the ground from northern Iraq all the way to Basra, you will find Assyrian artifacts. And I mean, when there was a war and they were dropping bombs, and they were accidentally discovering kings' tombs, and they were finding the ancient Assyrian king's tomb with the queen and all of their children, and all the gold still 100% intact. You know, and that's incredible. Like, people, if I wasn't even born Assyrian and I was living in these lands, and I would ask myself, why are all the artifacts Assyrian. What does that mean? If I'm living here, I need to know my history. I need to know how I became who I am. And I want to know 100% who I am. And, thankfully,
Yeah.
there's a DNA test. Would you recommend for all the Kurds and even Iraqis in general, start doing a DNA test to truly find out who your roots are historically?
Yeah, I'm honestly 100% for that. And to be honest, I've always been interested to do this DNA test, but I have like always there has been something happening in my personal life and I somehow forget about it. But there were one DNA test that they did there was honesty the one DNA test they did with the three different cities, Kurds from three different cities in Iraq. And there was one guy from Duhok. He was almost Greek, and he did have Assyrian blood in him. And then there were one from another city. He had. There were no Kurdish DNA in any of them whatsoever, but they called themselves Kurds. And this is where the interesting thing that I always ask, who really are we? Because there's no written history about us, and it's important to know who we really are. I mean, we call ourselves Kurds, but it's our DNA doesn't say anything about being Kurdish. And this is where the interesting part is. Like, he was almost Greek. He had a very high percent of being Greek. I believe, of course, when the Greeks has come, like they also like took over. They had their empire as well. And then there were one girl who called herself also Kurdish, and it showed in her thing that she was Armenian, which is
Mm-hmm.
also a very interesting thing. And
And
the
Jewish
third
people as
person,
well, Sarah. Like how many
yeah,
thousands, millions of
yeah,
Jews that were historically living in Assyria, and were
yeah,
some of our engineers and doctors, and now we have less than we actually have two Kurdish or two Jewish people in the entire country, which is sad because being a democracy, you should be able to protect anyone that is not of the original inhabitants. So whether someone has been inhabiting it
yeah,
for thousands of years, like the Jewish people, they should be
yeah.
able to still live in Al or the rest of Nain. But truly, truly, and I wanted to ask you, Sarah, would you ever move back to northern Iraq, or God willing, one day Assyria?
Honesty. No. Reason is why I have no. My life here in this country. I have built my career and my job, and as well looking at Middle East in general or Northern Iraq. It's such a mess. But a future Assyria, I'll be very interested to move back. Honestly, it will be something that I think would be maybe the most historical thing I would love to be part of. But today's Northern Iraq, no, it's totally a mess. It's you can't even live there in a decent way, especially if you're a woman, or if you're Christian, or if you're Assyrian, or if you don't follow the basically the rules that are there. There's no life. So no.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Sarah, what would you like to say to all the Kurdish people who are listening to you today?
All the Kurdish people globally. I would suggest them all look themselves, find sources, educate themselves about Assyrian people and Assyrian history, see who they truly are. Awful of people who've been finding their tribe where they are really are. The most people who've been finding the truth of their tribe and stuff like that has told me when I have suggested them, it has changed their life, it has changed the view that they've been thought. So I suggest them to read history, basically, Assyrian people, and to read about Assyrian people culture. The Assyrian culture is very one of the most beautiful cultures ever. The food we eat today, it's all Assyrians. The amazing food, the dolmas, from the kifta, from everything, from the kuba, it's all Assyrian food that we have been blessed to get to know. So I hope I hope they try to understand the Assyrians, and Assyrian people are absolutely not hateful. They do not hate anyone. They do not hate Kurds. But what has happened to them historically has been one of the worst in the human history. I wish Kurdish people has they have to count that Assyrians aren't just a minority, they are the entire region. They are the one who built this region. They might be minority today because of all the things that happened to them, but the land that they are standing in and calling homeland is Assyrian homeland. And I hope one day we definitely realize what we have done. And as a Kurdish, I would love to have Assyrian neighbors. I would love to live in an Assyrian society. And I think it's one of Assyrian people really is the origin of everything we have in Middle East today. So I don't know what to say more than that. Educate yourself, read, and stop judging without knowing anything, and don't follow the propaganda of the KRG. And because a lot of censor, a lot of lies, nothing comes out from the media outlets there are definitely true. And because of if you meet Assyrians in KRG and saying that everything is okay, everything is not okay. These people are just afraid of their lives, but they don't dare to speak. So please listen to Assyrian activists, go to groups where they show you real news, and you'll be educated enough to liberate yourself.
Wow, so compelling. And what would you like to say, Sarah, to the Assyrian people, not just in, the homelands, but all over the world, because there are more Assyrians listening to you in the international communities globally in almost all the countries in the world, since we have been dispersed in four corners of the world as one day the Jews were. That's why we believe in a prophecy where we will be brought back to Assyria. But, being almost possibly just the Assyrians alone, about 4 million people, 3 to 4 million estimated, not counting the ones who have been Kurdified, Arabized, and adapted to Islam. But in general, what would you like to say to all the Assyrians globally?
I want to say to all these Assyrians globally is that to keep on fight for your right. Basically, don't you guys haven't done anything wrong. You have all the right to fight back. You have all the right to ask for your lands. You have all the right to, in every corner, to ask ask about you. Not just ask about your right, but always to ask any Kurdish leader about their human violation. Be always there, because your voice has to be heard in any form. And I also hope that there are Syrians. Basically, Assyrian media outlets are more English, so that they can share globally with their global friends, educate the people about their homeland. I know a lot of Assyrians do that, but what I'm literally meaning is that they should be more active, because the people who are doing this propaganda all the time, they're active all the time, and that's why the reason that Assyrian people, they shouldn't, just think, oh, it's done, we can never have an Assyria, it's too late. It's never late. You should just keep on be active. There are a lot of Kurds out there like me who love to talk about the genocide, who love to tell people the truth about this. There are a lot of Kurds out there who supports you, but they might not have a voice, basically, because they're also afraid of their lives, their families. So my suggestion is to keep on what you're doing, basically.
Wow, thank you so much, Sarah. You are such a beautiful person inside and out, and quite intelligent. The most intelligent people in that area that I've spoken to, especially from the Kurdish people, that is just so intelligent, not in just genocide, but just in international affairs. And thank you so much, Sarah, for your bravery, for coming on, speaking about such an emotional, personal story, and truly a testimony and something that we have been trying to advocate about since, the genocide started. It's, as we were mentioning, the Armenian genocide stopped, the Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust stopped. The only genocide that continues on today is the Assyrian genocide, and it's such a unique type of genocide, because it's been going through so many different centuries, and so it keeps changing and evolving, and the different names and labels that are attacking us. But truly, as you said, Sarah, we don't hate the Kurdish people. We don't hate the Arab people. We don't hate Muslims in general. All we want is our homelands. We are the living ancestors in the region, and we just want to live in peace and be able to extend our civilization further. But you are such a quietly incredible person, Sarah. I really wanted to thank you for coming on and sharing your personal story, and I hope you come back on today, because I know we have so many more different topics to talk about that it's impossible to cover it in an entire hour.
Yeah, I'm more than thankful that you gave me the chance to be in this interview and that you wanted to hear my voice. I'm very blessed to know you, and I am maybe just the universe wanted us to meet and do a difference, so I'm very happy.
And that is really true. I think nothing happens by coincidence. I think everything, Sarah, is meant to be. But my final words would be to the Kurdish people, to please, wake up to the reality, the truth, and the history of what has happened, as Sarah and many people that are coming forward are explaining. But you truly need to be the beacon in your town and in your society to bring the truth forward, because truly this world is a temporary world. The next world, the eternal life, when we meet our maker, that's the final world, the eternal world. And so what we do in this world will definitely come with us in the future and will haunt us. And so when you see these types of interviews, or when you hear this, or even people speaking about history, or just being an Assyrian and being out and just wanting to live alone, please be nice to them. When you see an Assyrian, instead of having animosity and anger in you, and just wanting that greed to take what is theirs, is you need to eliminate that and give them a hug. Tell them you love them, understand their history and what has happened to the Assyrian people. And you can research, you can, like as Sarah mentioned, expand your knowledge. Don't just listen to what the Kurdish regional government is teaching you, because it's not the truth. Because if we're sharing truth and truly educating their people and not to them, then the people would protect the Assyrians with all their might, and understand that they are living in Assyria, and that this was, a horrible thing that happened in history, amongst other things, but something that we today, as our generation, can change. And, God, just, if we can not only coexist, but help us with our dream, and that is to have our own government, to be able to live in peace, to have our Assyria back, and to be able to protect our people, and not just protect our own people, but there was a time where we protected many different people living in Assyria, and we just need your help to get back on our feet and know that Assyrians don't hate you. And I know that if you have any kind of anger and animosity in you, it's because you were lied to, and lied about history and the truth of what happened to those homelands, including what happened to the innocent thousands of Assyrians who were murdered, raped, and their villages were burned, and all their wealth was stolen from them, including my two great-grandfathers. And, to Sarah's testimony, truly ironic how God has brought us together. Great granddaughter of genocide victims and as the great granddaughter of the genocide leader, the Kurdish leader who was amongst those who committed crimes and single-handedly took entire villages and burned them down. So we just ask that, there's a reason why all of this is together for the first time, and that we truly are to take on this mission and bring back Assyria, because it will happen. So why not be part of a project that is happening in our lifetime, that you can one day say, you know what, I helped the Assyrian people get back their state. And that there's nothing more beautiful than that, than reviving an ancient group of people that brought so much to civilization, to revive them and bring back a state that, who knows, may have another discovery or another beautiful thing that they will offer the world, that we can share with everyone and live together in just true peace and stop this hatred. But, thank you, Sarah. Thank you to A&B, and thank you for everyone who's wanting to share this and support incredible people like Sarah to come forward and repent, and also to come forward and acknowledge the Assyrian genocide and what truly the truth of what happened in Iraq and other parts of the nearby countries. Thank you so much. God bless you. And thank you so much for watching A&B.